Thank you all so much. Now, let me quickly introduce our great panel here. We have with us His Excellency Khaled Ibn Salama, the Deputy Minister for Industrial Affairs here at the Ministry of Industry and Mineral Resources. As always, lovely to have you with us, and I'm delighted that you've taken the time. George Fang joins us now. He's the board member and executive vice chairman from Yuhua Cobalt in China. We're delighted that he's here. Helena is with us, Helena Nonka, and Helena is the Director of Strategy and Sustainability with Anglo American. Thank you for being with us. Emily Olson joins us. She is with Vale Base Metals. Emily, thank you so much, the Chief Sustainability and Corporate Affairs Officer. And Mikael Staffas, the President and CEO of Boliden. So thank you so much. We'll get a nice, I think, look around the world from all of you in terms of how you're dealing with stakeholders in different areas and actually what you're doing. Mikael, let me just start with you, if I may. You know, your operations are mainly in Northern Europe for the most part. Again, developed markets. How, if any way, is it a different approach to the stakeholder sort of responsibility and engagement there? And again, how has this evolved over the years?
Well, number one, of course, it's all a matter of where you are in the world and what kind of stakeholders you have. And of course, in our situation, we have stakeholders that are, you could say, economically advanced. Most people in kind of Sweden don't really need mining to make a living. You can make a living in other ways as well. So the stakeholders that we have will be locals. They will have the typical not in my backyard type of stakeholders. But then you also have to look away from the kind of local situation and also look at the stakeholders that you can find on a more regional or national level around what you want to develop the country and what also these minerals that are eventually going to be mined, what they're going to be used for. And there you have stakeholders that you need to manage as well.
And again, I mean, I think that concept, we see that in Europe and indeed around the world, whereby, you know, and even I think in the rush to renewables, you know, everyone's excited about it, but again, it's coming going, not in my backyard. Build it down the road.
I just heard in the last panel, people talk about what's happening in Portugal and Spain, and that's a very typical example of that. And we have similar things as well. We have good resources for lots of these critical minerals in Northern Europe, in Northern Scandinavia, and Finland, and so on. And you have a very strong negative local feeling about it, not in my backyard, somewhere else, but not at my place.
It's tough, and it's a dilemma that everyone has to look for, because, Emily, when we look at, I suppose, the demand for minerals, I mean, it's growing at such a rate, and it has to be met, because we need to, you know, make sure this energy transition happens. You know, it's difficult sometimes to actually get common ground, particularly among everybody, you know, and at the same time, you have to guarantee that supply. Talk to me about, you know, your approach at Vale Base Metals.
Well, you know, I think absolutely, as we see supply and demand really shift over the next decades, you know, looking at how we approach our stakeholders. And so for Vale, you know, first of all, I think the changing nature of partnership and stakeholders is very evident. I mean, hence why I'm here today. You know, we've, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize our great new partnership with Manara here in the kingdom. But, you know, switching to what you were saying is, we've always had to take a community-centered view on where we operate. You know, our regions being Brazil, Canada, and Indonesia. And that has changed over time. And, you know, I look at the work we've done in Canada, which is a very open mining jurisdiction, and very comfortable, I would say, with mining. But, you know, the stakeholders are changing. It's different. The expectations are changing, and as they should. You know, it's evolving. And so we look at, you know, if I look at, you know, two of our operations, looking in Canada at our Voisey's Bay operation in the far north of Newfoundland, right? You know, we've been in partnership there for many years with our Indigenous and Aboriginal community, but that's changing as well. The nature of the business and the nature of the work changes. So we will continue to have to look at what that multi-layered engagement needs to be. And so for us, you know, we very much prioritize our Indigenous and Aboriginal rights holders, and they are a huge part of how we operate and what our value chain looks like. And that will get further concentrated over time.
And you have to be adaptable and flexible to make sure you accommodate that. Yeah,
absolutely. And you have to have the right tools, and you have to have the right attitude.
Helena, you know, I suppose sometimes we think, you know, there's a huge rush, there's a tremendous urgency here. And in that rush to our greener and sustainable future, I mean, is there a danger that we lose track of, what mining is really all about and what it delivers to the world. And I think we have to look at this in the context of, can a responsible mining sector actually deliver, solve the problems of scarcity, economic development, while looking after the environment and making sure we have a clean transition. It's a big demand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is a big focus on the role of mining in supporting green transition, but we all know that green transition will not happen unless it's also a just transition. So we must be solving for eradication of poverty, reducing inequality, just as we solve for climate change. And just to put things into perspective, what it actually means, nearly 1 billion people in the world today live at or below the poverty line. Many of these people are in the super region. And so, but what does it mean in terms of materials required to address that challenge? And just to kind of give everybody in the developing world the living standard equivalent just half of that enjoyed in the West would require nearly 1 billion tons of iron ore, and will require additional 70 billion tons of iron ore and 1 billion tons of copper. 70 billion tons of iron ore is the amount of iron ore that was produced over the entire course of human history. And it's 1.3 times of copper that would produce over the entire course of human history. To feed global population over the next 30 years will require as much fertilizer as was used in the last 100 years. So yes, it is a challenge, but also that's the scale of opportunity that lies ahead of us. We must not forget about that.
And again, it's actually combining both and making sure you can manage it.
Exactly.
George, the demand, without a doubt, and just even as Helene outlined it there, it's huge. I mean, these are figures exactly you have not seen. They used to take a decade to do. It is so big. And there are many, many stakeholders involved. And it doesn't matter where you operate in the world. This is a global challenge. It needs a global solution. How do you approach that? And how do you make sure that the supply chain, remains resilient?
Yes, very good question. So, nowadays the demand is high, that's there, but the business nature and the environmental and also the world is changing. So let's think about a different business philosophy. As you mentioned, the global challenge needs a global solution. And also there is how to ensure that the supply chain resilience, how to build a sustainable green development supply chain is one of the key elements for the business. So that's why Huayu maybe cannot say too much. Why Hua means China, Yu means friendship. Why I mention that one? That's a business philosophy. That means in English, to working together with the right partner, to add value to the partner, to build a reliable and green, sustainable development industry ecology together with our partner, together with participants in the industry. Just one example, we're working together with Vale Group. And also we're working together with Ford Models in Indonesia. We set up a joint venture together. So Ford Models is downstream, Vale is upstream, Huayu is in the middle.
In the middle,
In the middle. So we're working together in the ecology, multi-shareholders, global solution to find a way to have a sustainable development for the whole EV industry ecology. Thank you.
Now, Your Excellency, I wanted you to listen to all of the producers here and hear, what they're doing and some of the challenges that they're facing. And now, if I may, from you, that government point of view, and particularly here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, how do you balance, I suppose, economic development with the environmental, with the social, all of these considerations to, actually make sure that you're developing a very successful and sustainable mineral sector?
Thank you. Although the question is extremely complex, by the way, to answer.
Sorry about that.
But
I put it all together for you.
it's very important, by the way, but to answer it in a proper way, even for us in Saudi Arabia when we embarked in the sector, it hasn't been, I would say, one of the main focus sectors in Saudi Arabia that had its own positives and negatives, by the way. But when we looked at it, I think we heard it from my colleagues here and during the last few days. We have to approach it in an Earth Inc. approach. So In a global sense, we always heard also a very important element, which is the human part. So people are scattered around the world in the Earth Inc. approach, and some are residing on minerals that is rich with all the metals and minerals that everybody needs around the world. People or companies are also very good in extraction and refinery and utilization, industrialization. The important, I think the previous session he mentioned it in his closing remark, that we always have to go to the people, make sure that they are stable. This is an important foundation if we want to really go and build a sustainable global supply chain. Now we come and define where we want to play as Saudi Arabia. And I think to summarize what has been discussed over the last day and also this morning, it is in a simple way, mining now is taken off as one of the important, I think the third pillar in our industry diversification. So this is already determined. And once we set our goals, we just go and march in. Very carefully also, we have to understand, this is why I said the Earth Inc., we had to see and comprehend this whole global value chain from all aspects. From the extraction, from the minerals, and most importantly, how to create a stable value chain supply. Saudi Arabia, if you look at it, situated within, I think, 7 hours, we cover most of the economy of the world, from the mines all the way to the users. Luckily, we have the 2 ports that is in the east and the west that is well connected. It creates a resilience to unexpected interruptions. This is another one. The important also part, what His Royal Highness mentioned yesterday very clearly, that mineral extraction purification is always an energy-driven process.
Yes, yes.
So to make that energy available in all forms, that be green, that would be clean. There are different names, but now I think the plans has been set. We will make it available according to where the demand will be. That will be in the east or the west or the south of Saudi Arabia. All of this is good, but what is really important is that when we hear about supply chain, a connection between the miners and the user, and also there are the middle companies who bridge both. Important is to see the human part. This is what will create a really sustainable and resilient supply chain. So if we are one company around the earth, you cannot ignore one small department that they will do the mining or the exploration. You have to take care of them. They have to see part of the value that goes to them. They have to be stable. And it is not only by words, but also by good actions. And there are so many organizations around the world. Just now, with the creation of this mining council, the really excellent thing we have seen is that everyone speaks his mind. The frustration without a legacy of, I have to worry about my operation and such mine or company or others. They try to fix it from the human part, even if it affects them a little bit, that within their company they are not, open to talk about certain small issues here and there. So I've heard it. We've heard it now. We are addressing it. Hopefully, the decisions not only to implement the best practices, but make sure that they are implemented equitably.
Absolutely. Helena, if you can come in here, where we look at many stakeholders who are involved. And, as His Excellency mentioned, people at the very heart of everything we do here. But are we addressing all stakeholders? And of course, it can't be a one-off thing. This is not just an exercise that you do at one point of the process and then tick a box and forget about it. Talk to me about what we can do, perhaps, what we can do better.
Yeah, I think it is important to, I think we all would agree that doing more of the same but faster is not going to work, because traditionally, like if you think mining was about competition for the so-called tier 1 assets, But today it is a competition not just for the mineral resources themselves. We are competing for water, we are competing for land, we are competing for talent, for technology, in addition to competing for capital and markets. And we are not just competing with other mining companies, but for example, for water and land, we are competing with alternative sources of livelihoods for the communities. And we're competing for talent with pretty much every other industry as mining becomes more technologically advanced. So I think if we want to decarbonize the economies and as we improve people's lives, I think we need a radically different approach, not just to how we produce and use and recycle the metals, but how we leverage the minerals value chains to drive economic growth and development. And that requires a very different multi-stakeholder partnership model, because it's the traditional CSR approach was all about distribution of wealth from the mining activities themselves. We need to think differently. We need to think about how we can leverage the mining activity to enable economic, self-sustaining economic growth ecosystem that are enabled by mining, but critically are not dependent on the mining. So because again, mining should not be the source of economic dependency. It should be the driver of economic diversification and growth. And to do that, it's not enough just to engage with the local communities. You need to work with the governments, with other partners, with international development organizations. It's fundamentally, it's an economic development project. We have quite a bit of experience with that. In Anglo, we call it collaborative regional development model that we are currently increasingly implementing across our operations globally. And like I said, it's not about mining. Mining only is a very small part of it.
Emily, talk to me about equity and partnership. This is something you talk a lot about. And, you know, is it time that we actually take a really deep look at this and maybe disturb the whole focus and, you know, shuffle it around to actually be looking at, we have social, environmental, financial. There's so many areas that possibly need a new focus.
No, absolutely. I'm going to echo what Helena just very eloquently said. You know, as an industry, you know, as Vale, this is our opportunity to reset how we look at equity and what we mean by equity. You know, this isn't necessarily a 2% stake in a mine, you know, and go about your day. This is rethinking that whole ecosystem. And for me, I look at Canada just as one example, is you have such a multi-layered group of stakeholders, from customers to indigenous rights holders, and you have the ability to really build a much different type of ecosystem to deliver what George was talking about on battery materials, right? And so taking a step back and working with our governments, it's something I'm very passionate about at Vale, is ensuring the financial tools are available. When we look at those equity type models, what that partnership could be, and also creating that intrinsic flexibility that every region is different. You know, this is not a cookie cutter approach. And so having the tools to put on the table in each jurisdiction, I look at my own portfolio, it's very different, you know, from Brazil to Canada to Indonesia. And so having both the regulatory, financial, and policy tools at place to ensure we're bringing and maximizing and creating as much value as possible for all of our stakeholders. I just think we have an obligation and an opportunity now to, as Helena said, we can't do the same that we have been doing. And
especially, I think, in new areas as well, where we're starting with a blank sheet. There's absolutely
Absolutely.
no excuse.
Absolutely.
We need to do it. Michael, when we look at, ensuring supply chain transparency, I suppose, you look at some of the work that you're doing at Boliden and expanding from production to smelting and other operations. How do you actually examine your supply chain and, make sure what's at the end of it that is sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, this is, of course, one of the most important things, to make sure that what comes out in the end is actually not just sustainable in our part of the value chain, but in the whole value chain that builds up to that. This is not a new concept, but it's gotten much more focus over the last few years. And as you know, also the EU is about to embark on legislation around due diligence and need for due diligence. And as some people sometimes joke that the EU is kind of incapable of exporting lots of things, but they're very good in exporting regulation. So if this comes true in the EU, it might very soon become true around the world, similar needs. I'm actually one that is quite positive to this development. Many are negative because I think lots of the bureaucracy has been built up. But in this endeavor, it will make things easier actually, because there will be standards and we can rely on standards. Because today, we as individual companies are fully responsible for making sure that we have due diligence in place for our supply chains. We as a company, we've done this for many, many years. We've developed methods with visits, with, what are the crucial things. We have consultants that check our suppliers on the back end. We have all these metrics put in place to kind of avoid that we are being caught into something that we don't want to be part of. But I think that this whole landscape could ease up quite a lot if there will be international standards saying that these suppliers are okay. They've been due diligence and they can be leveraged by everybody. That make the consultant world a little bit smaller, but we will all be happy about that. But I think there's just to come back to it, there is actually today no real shortcut. Today you have to do.
Everybody's watching.
Or everybody's watching, is watching on every dimension, and you have to do the work. And it's not enough that you're good on 19 out of 20 things. You need to be good at 20 out of 20 things, because if you miss that 1 out of 20, you will get caught. And it's a lot of work, and there is no shortcut.
Yeah, no, you're so right. It's a different world in terms of how you actually execute and deliver. George, we look at the demand for, nickel, cobalt, lithium, the list goes on. You're one of the big global battery players in the world here. But, talk to me a little bit about how technology is actually changing, how it's helping, and, how it's engaging and maybe helping you with stakeholders as well.
Thank you so much for asking this question. I'm very much happy to be asked. That's because, even I used to be 5 years investment banker, but in my bone, in my blood, I'm an engineer. Working quite
So you have the right combination, an engineer who can do the finances. This is the perfect qualification nowadays.
So I'm working in the technology innovation sector for many, many years. Talking about for the nickel, cobalt, lithium, EV batteries technology, they are fundamentally changed during the last few years. So at the very beginning, from Huayu built up in 2002, so during that time, our technology, LCO, is we're working, that's why Huayu cobalt, we're working in the cell phone battery materials. That's cobalt oxide and lithium cobalt for the cell phone, for the computer battery. With time goes on, we're taking the second generation technology is a move to EV nowadays energy reserve battery materials. Now we talk about NCM. That's why we moved to Indonesia working on the nickel. That's NCM means nickel, cobalt, manganese. NCA means nickel, cobalt, aluminum. So, and also plus lithium hydroxide or lithium carbonate, we get another material is NCM, lithium ternary battery material, and even LFP, lithium phosphate materials. So that's fundamentally changed for the second generation of the technology. In the recently, especially in the past 3 or 4 years, while you get a most advanced technology in the world in the ternary precursor, and so in this way, we, especially in the 3 factors. First, we talk about carbon neutralization, about carbon tracing. So we need to have a green development strategy. In that case, that's because our client and our serve is pay a lot of attention to the carbon neutralization and carbon tracing, and to get a better life of the world. The second is a high standard ESG. So the environmental, social, and the governance. That's why we're working together with Peter Valet, we're working together with Volkswagen. We hope one day we can working together with Anglo American and Boliden. So, and then high standard ESG is our threshold to do the business. So in technology, we need to think about some changes.
Yes.
To fit the high standard ESG. The third one is we need working together with our partner. For example, it's a client driving. So working together with Volkswagen, working together with Ford Models, say, hi guys, what's your requirement? Mm-hmm. What's your, according to the market, what's the next generation of EV? What's the characteristic? And then we make some innovation and changes in our battery material technology. So that's the third point. So nowadays, we get one last sentence, sorry. So to my personal view, so AI plus high standard ESG with carbon tracing, plus Huayou technology to move the production capacity outside of China, for example, in Saudi, in Europe, in United States. That will get a better utilization of our good technology. Thank you.
Good, good. And I mean, and ultimately the customer is making choice as well. The customers become a stakeholder for once. Your Excellency, talk to me about what the Kingdom is doing differently. I mean, we look here, and yesterday we heard, less than 30%, about 30% has been exploited. The value of minerals here from 1.3 trillion now to 2.5. We look ahead to this. But what's so different, about what's happening here? You don't have that long legacy, of a mining sector. And anything specific you are doing to make sure that collaboration with stakeholders is top of mind?
Yes, definitely. There are many of them. I will start maybe from the beginning, from an operational side. You've heard His Excellency, the Minister, announced yesterday the $182 million incentive to maybe get even onboarding the junior miners program. So you try to maybe even improve the image of mining to the junior people, get them back to school to geology. So one of the universities, I think, was announced by His Excellency the Ramayan. KFUPM is starting a program also how to do the mining. So we're trying to even focus the whole social system, especially the youngers, to go into the field with a more, I would say, with the less legacy of how it was done before. Now things are done in a much better way.
And it's more high-tech, it's a more attractive
More
industry.
high-tech, it's more, exactly, it's like an exploration. You have to find the treasure. There are so many tools to help you. It is not hardship, it is more intellectual approach than before. This helped a lot, and we have seen an amazing result so far. The other one is the mining, I would say, licensing law. So we try now, as you said, we are starting with no legacy. That gives us a really good starting point. We apply and be very, I would say, comfortable with the practices applied now, and then not stand there or stop there. I think even the council, they discussed how we take it even a step further. Every time we take care of the human, the social part, the environmental part, and as my colleagues also mentioned, is we all agree on the what. It's just the how to ensure that all the companies are adhering. Are there the proper governance? If they don't do what needs to be done, the tools has to be there. So coming back to Saudi Arabia, what we do it differently, the creation of a Center of Excellence. This propagation of new ways, the technology has to be spread as fast as possible. Really creating the industry, or we will make the platform here. So people talk about legacy of challenges that created by legacy of operations. Improving the image of the industry. Making the energy available, as also was said yesterday, even exporting it where the treatment at the mine should be done. So at least we have a stable supply, also a stable ecosystem and social system. Was mentioned also very clearly several times, minimize the tailing at the mines. And I think in the system we've created also, we made sure during not only exploration, but also the mining until the closure of the mine. Everything has to be clearly stipulated.
Yes.
Until the mine is closed very safely with the minimum effect on people or environment. All of these things are a good practice. We have only to make it happen now with our partners and colleagues. I think this is now a matter of a few months or a few years to put them on the ground. And maybe one last remark, just citing very few examples in Wa'ad al-Shamal. And I said the good practices. They created a school for the boys. I know the northern part of Saudi Arabia wasn't, I would say, the most flourishing part. And but these programs, it changed the region to a much better place.
Yes.
And the economy flourished.
And that's what it's about. This industry actually can change lives and develop, you know, a whole new economy out there. We've less than a minute each, so I want to get a little bit of a 2-for-1 from each of you. Michael, you mentioned a little about, you know, bureaucracy, regulations. You know, that's still clearly important because the standards will help you. If you could maybe give me the quick synopsis perhaps on that, and again, that maybe call to action. What can we all do faster, quicker, and better?
No, I think that what we all need, number one, I should say that we are all feeling good to being here because we are producing what is needed to decarbonize the world. I think what we need to do more and better is to decarbonize ourselves. I think it's important for us all to step up against the global initiatives there are. I think the science-based targets is something that we all need to gear up to be able to feel that we're doing something good. And I would say that the next generation behind that is not so much spoken about, has to do with biodiversity. I would expect that we as an industry will have to put up commitments on biodiversity to have them out soon. That's much more difficult to measure, but there will be measurements coming around there as well. And I would say that will be the next call to action for the industry as such.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fascinating too. We all have to look at that, and maybe that deserves a whole panel on its own the next time, because I think it's so fascinating. What do we do after a mine? We have to be looking at that. Emily, of course, agriculture is part and parcel of what we do. You know, we're mining for fertilizer, but we're working in rural areas too. How is that, I suppose, you know, the nexus that's there? And again, maybe a little quick call to action,
Yeah,
the abbreviated version.
I'll be quick. The clock is ticking. I will point strictly to one of our great partnerships. Again, you'll hear me talk about the evolution of the partnership because I believe it's very important. And when we look at zero waste mining, we have a partnership with a company called Bluest One in Brazil, where we are a large operator. Looking at zero waste mine and taking refinery slag and processing into fertilizer. These are the partnerships we should be thinking about.
And that's circular economy.
And it's the circular economy. So when I think of a call to action, building, Michael was saying, we need to also change how we're looking at our partners. There's so much value and so many non-traditional partners out there for the mining industry to tap into and really creating that circular world. And I think, as we look in the next 20 years, I would love to see partnerships will redefine how people look at mining. And we have a lot to offer.
Helena, when we look at this, it's a long-term game. Investors are a little impatient sometimes too. How do we make sure we get the right people on board? Because this investment, we need it. So if there's a call to action there, what would it be?
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge because, again, mining, as you said, is a long-term, multi-generation business. That's our investment horizon. Our investors' investment horizon is 6 months, in some cases 6 minutes. Right?
They get a
and so that's a
impatient,
completely, and mining industry trades at the lowest valuation multiple of all the industries. So it is a problem. That's why we need patient capital. And what would be the call to action? To me, I think it's important. How do we work together to make sustainability affordable? Because there is no point in producing the most sustainable minerals if they are unaffordable for the industries that we're actually trying to enable. And that's, to me, where the partnership really needs to focus on. And so how do we collaborate to make sustainability competitive and affordable, as opposed to it just being an additional cost?
George, again, I suppose on this investment issue, and you're working around the world, you need to bring communities on board. What's your best sort of, I suppose, focus and guidance for making sure you bring communities together?
Thank you. So, very good question. So when we, while it's a global company, we develop global business. We're meeting with government, the first stakeholders, and also community, the very important stakeholders. So there's a Chinese old saying, if you want to not thirsty, we need to make the rivers full of water, and then you yourself not thirsty. In that case, to have a better life and high quality development and growth is the ultimate target for all the people, all the countries, all the societies. We're working together to have a better life and good, high quality development, make the best interest for all the stakeholders, and then working together to add value to other stakeholders. So, for example, if one day we have developed a business in Saudi, we're working together with Your Excellency, say, okay, we need to make a contribution to Saudi. Otherwise, it's not the right way to do.
True.
And that's what you have to do. I will leave you, Your Excellency, the closing word here. A lot of focus, strong focus, commitment, as we look ahead, ambition for Saudi Arabia. How do you make sure that you become that global player that you're well on your way to do?
Thank you. I think just a summary of all what has been said. I mean, in Saudi Arabia, if we look at it, what we are offering now. One is that the energy required to do the process of mining and making sure the utilization are good. The minerals and rare earth metals that is available in Saudi Arabia has been discovered and more will be on the way. This is second. A logistical hub that is clearly and evidently, I think, seen by the world, how it can be well utilized and more investment are there. This is another pillar. More important than all of that is that it will be the ground where our starting point will be the best practices and pushing better from there. The council, in our belief, will be the right platform. Everyone will set the right standards and making sure the what is also coupled with the right how of how to do. And I think this is in summary. And maybe last point, which is very important, is the capital market attraction. Now it has been there, and we are seeing a huge growth. And I think this will be also a major enabler to make sure all of our plans are met and exceeded.
And that constant engagement, I think, with the capital markets, with all stakeholders, with the public, and possibly with the media down the road. We're going to have to, one of the days, have a panel on that one, I think, because, we don't always get the headlines that maybe this industry deserves and the great work that you all do. I want to thank you all, Your Excellency, so much. Thank you so much, George, Halima, Emily, and to Mikhail. Once again, my great panel here, thank you so much.